So there's another. Hey, talk about an incredible blunder. Uh, Skull and Bones has been delayed again for about the sixth time. So if you guys don't remember, and I don't blame you. Skull and Bones was basically it's an Ubisoft game. It's not vaporware. It's a development hell game. It's a hell game. Skull and Bones was inspired by, remember when Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag came out? And it was like every other Assassin's Creed game, except it had really cool ship stuff. Like really cool naval combat and going around doing expeditions and stuff like that. And a lot of people actually really liked that. Ubisoft was like, hey, let's oh yeah, that's actually such a weird funny timeline, because like, that stuff actually originated from AC3, the weird like American Revolution one. That stuff was in there, and then they were like, let's just make a whole game out of that. So it's weird because Black Flag was already kind of that game. It was just more of an Assassin's Creed game. I guess they decided, well, okay, let's do the third in the Ubisoft ship pirate simulator series, and let's just make it just about that, and no Assassin's Creeding. It's just we're gonna make a pirate game, and it's gonna be like all the stuff people liked from that, and that was, oh god, Skull and Bones announcement. Excuse me. It has a Wikipedia page. 2013. So 10 years ago they started work on this. And mind you, yeah, so I guess that was probably just, so AC4 came out in 2013, so I guess what happened was they just saw the really positive reception to it, and were like, let's just do that, let's just go into that, let's just make a pirate game. So they probably announced it like before work had even really started, and then, oh yeah, it was an expansion for Black Flag. That's what it was. Yes, now I'm remembering the timeline. Thank you, Wikipedia article. It was an expansion for Black Flag. They were just gonna like a DLC pack essentially for AC4, and then it was supposed to be an MMO spin-off called Black Flag Infinite. And then they made it into its own independent game. So like now, like when that happened, you can do. I don't feel like doing all the research. I feel like I knew the whole story at one time, and it just kind of fell out of my head. The important thing is that this game is being developed by Ubisoft Singapore. And you're like, Singapore? I know Ubisoft has a lot of offices, but Singapore, really? Yeah, so they wanted to open... So here's the thing. So they wanted to open They opened an office in Singapore. And, Skull and Bones was going to be their first title. The problem is that Skull and Bones has been marred with production issues. Like when I say development hell, there's like I remember reading this behind the scenes article, like into a bunch of like, anonymous interviews and stuff that basically painted it out to be a complete disaster. Management that doesn't know what they're doing, a super confused vision. I remember at one point I reading a quote from a developer that said something like, we didn't understand, is it like are you going to play as a person or a boat? Is the player controlled like character a like a human being or the ship? Like, they didn't understand that, and it was basically this cycle of, it's been locked in this cycle from what I remember from this fucking ancient ass article I read like a year or two ago, that basically someone gets in charge. So the first person in charge of the project has a vision for the game. They end up leaving the company because of this or that. A new person takes the helm. Takes the helm. It's actually like a naval reference. They have a completely new vision for the game. We do that for 2 years. That person leaves the company. Rinse, repeat over and over and over again for 10 years. And you have Skull and Bones, a game that's been delayed 6 times, and no one knows what the fuck it's supposed to be. Till like eventually, I think the most recent version of the game that I think is coming out, I think they finally figured out what it's going to be, is you are just the boat, completely getting away from like the cool stuff from the Assassin's Creed games, where you were like a guy on the boat and you were directing it, and then like, boarding other ships in, like swashbuckling combat kind of thing. Just like, okay. And there's a Reddit thread. I was reading the Reddit thread about the delay. I was about to say cancellation. About the delay. And there's someone linked. They showed from like the gameplay showcase from like last year or something like that, where there's like, oh, part of the game is like you're collecting resources for your boat. There's like a trading system or something like that. You're collecting resources, and the way that they show that is the boat pulls up alongside an island, and there's a banana tree on the edge of the island, and they hold a button, and the banana tree just starts like telepathically shaking, and bananas start falling out, and then they are disappearing, and the counter for your bananas collected goes up. It's the funniest shit in the world. Just, like, it doesn't look like a real game. It looks like a joke. The boat is telepathically collecting bananas from the tree. It's so funny. And you might be wondering, well, why hasn't the game just been released? Why hasn't it just been canceled? Like, why are they even bothering? Well, when Ubisoft wanted to open this office in Singapore, I believe it was for tax reasons or something like that, they basically got a grant from the Singaporean government. And the Singaporean government said the conditions of the grant that we know of are that the studio, they will basically like fund some of the studio, right? They'll get some government funding. Government funded Singapore pirate game. But in exchange, one of the stipulations is that Ubisoft Singapore has to put out a new IP. They have to put out a new IP. And if they don't, we don't know what the terms of the contract are, right? We don't know what the potential punishment is, but they are liable to Singaporean law, which includes caning. I'm going to repeat that. Caning. As in, this is a very long shot, and I don't think this would ever happen. But I think it's really funny that because Singapore still employs corporal punishment in the form of beating you with a cane, that if they don't release this game ever, I don't know who the studio heads, Yves Guimard, that little rat, would have to be beaten in the street with a cane. Obviously, I mean, I'm assuming that wouldn't happen, but the thought alone is awesome. Like, it really is hilarious to me. So, more likely, so you're like, okay, well then why, okay, at this point, if they have to put it out, and they could get caned if they don't, why don't they just cut their losses, say fuck it, put out the game, bare bones, whatever, just shit out the game, move on, right? Well, there is a comment on this Reddit thread that is pretty elucidating. Where the fuck is it? Where is it? Here it is. Someone writes on the thread, named Sile, the user Sile Spawn. They write, while I'm not aware of the content of the contract, having worked with large companies pulling grant money from the government of a certain country, expose me to how those grants are very tight with their conditions to prevent people from abusing and throwing out a bare-bones product. From the particular companies and government contracts I dealt with, a few of the conditions included an income statement for the company/project on a quarterly basis, a cash flow statement showing how much money granted is spent, matching investment to the dollar granted, as in, for each dollar the grant provides, the company has to spend $2 on the project. If the grant is significant, and the definition of significant varies, there's third-party panels appointed to scrutinize the project over at every point of development. They don't, okay, it just says if the grant is significant. Okay. And stakeholders' feedback is requested regularly. Then, after the project is complete, depending on what it is, there might be more objectives. In the case of a product that requires distribution/sales, some conditions could be the copies sold, gross turnover, ratings on certain platforms or websites, and/or the group of the platform/website, the general reception of the product. Do reviews/feedback hint that the product underperformed by a huge margin? And a focus group of stakeholders. And then they write, and much, much, much more, the bigger the grant is. I've seen a lot of horror stories where companies take grants and couldn't conform with all the conditions, then pump out a fake product to satisfy the conditions just to get hit with heavy penalties, converting the grant into a loan with interest and so on. So, if they just shit out an unfinished game and it sells badly and it reviews poorly and reflects poorly on the company, that could still be grounds for like a failure to hold up their end of the contract. The Singaporean government, they're trying to stimulate their economy, right? That's why they give them a grant for this stuff. They say, hey, you're a big tech business, right? You're a big software business. We're going to give you some a nice hefty grant to put out a game. We're gonna get the ball rolling. We're gonna help you get the ball rolling by giving you a grant. And if everything goes well, then you're gonna stimulate our economy. We're gonna have tech jobs. That's going to attract workers. That's going to attract other companies to the area, and it's going to be good overall. And this is basically their investment. They're going to maybe lose a little money up front, spend a little money up front in the investment for the long-term benefit of the Singaporean economy. And if the game just fucking flops, I mean, they're not patrons, right? The government here is not being a patron to Ubisoft. They are investing in them. And if the investment fails to make enough back, basically, if it fails to help the economy in the way that they want it to, then they're not going to be happy, right? They're not going to take that sitting down. Standing down. They're not going to take that standing down. So if the game comes out bad, it's bad publicity, it's bad press, it's a big failure. The studio could close. Ubisoft could close the studio straight up. And that would just be a complete waste of money for all the grant money that the government's given them. So all of these could risk breaking the contract. And like this person in the comments points out, if they're basically unsuccessful, or if they fail, the grant could turn into a loan. Like, say you give them $1 billion. Well, that could now be $1 billion loan. And you got to pay that back to them. It goes to change the definition to a loan, and it's got interest. And Ubisoft is already not doing great in terms of sales. There were some recent articles about how their sales have been pretty dry recently. They've killed a lot of goodwill that they had with a lot of their series. The cash cows are running dry. And they might be getting a little too big for their britches, I guess. A bubble popping, perhaps? I don't know. I feel a little bad about this, because I met someone who was really nice who worked at Ubisoft. Not in like a development side, but they were great. I met them through my work with the maid when I was at GDC. And they were really nice. And there's obviously a lot of nice people and good people who work there. And that's one of the shames of situations like this, which is that there's lots of like good like people who work there who obviously do a good job, or they work hard, right? And they should be good at their job. And then terrible management basically just... You remember what I said a couple episodes ago? I said something like, there's more management positions than there are good managers. Or there's more leadership positions than there are good leaders. Yeah. God, every day the games industry is such a perfect lens. I didn't get that from anyone. That's a quote from me, baby. This industry is such a good exemplar of that. Oh, you know what this reminds me of? Chronicles of Illyria. Chronicles of Illyria. Go look up a video of who did the video on that? Kira TV. There's been a bunch of videos about this game. It was like a Kickstarter MMO, like sandbox survival MMO that was just way too overambitious. Excuse me. And basically now the game is not, like, it's not happening. Like, it's a big fucking disaster. But the developer is basically stuck. Excuse me. The developer is basically stuck in this situation where, because he got other people to invest in the game, this might have been through Kickstarter, or like investors through Kickstarter, or maybe something else, like venture capital or something. Basically, the investors have him by the balls, and if they don't keep putting out like proof that they're actually working on the game, any other instance, this would have just been, they would have just canceled it and moved on, and just eaten the loss. But because basically, if they fail to, if the game dies for real officially, he could get like sued into oblivion by the shareholders, or sorry, the investors. So he's basically stuck putting out like monthly updates on this game that is never going to come out. Like literal hell. It's like a Greek. It's some modern day equivalent of like, you know, Sisyphus rolling the boulder up the hill, or something, like one of those just stories of people trapped in hell. Yeah, that's what the whole Skull and Bones thing comes at. Man, I wish there was a... There's oh wait, what's that? There's a pirate game, isn't there? What's that? pirate game, because I like the Sea of Thieves. I never actually checked out Sea of Thieves. Maybe I should. What is... Oh yeah, it's a Rare game. I totally forgot about that. Maybe I should check, because the idea of like a pirate game is cool to me. It's a cool idea. I like the idea of going around doing pirate stuff. I'm not a huge fan of the art style. I kind of want a grittier pirate game, but whatever. I've heard, I don't know, yeah, man, 2018, this feels like a game that's just been kind of out there. I feel like it had a rough launch and I just kind of like forgot about it, and then I guess it's just kept on trucking. Oh my god, people also ask, is Sea of Thieves a toxic game? Oh, apparently it's not. Someone says it's the least toxic multiplayer game that they've played. Huh, well, alright.